walked up between the houses. Zima was there. That's the one time I went between the houses.
This is Jeffrey Pedo, a police sergeant being accused of unspeakable crimes that sent shockwaves throughout a small town in Illinois. Now, for many, the title of police officer is synonymous with protection, safety, and integrity. But what happens when one from the force becomes the very evil they're sworn to combat? Bloomington was the kind of neighborhood where everyone felt safe. Kids played outside with friends until the streetlights came on and the fear of crime was distant. But between 2002 and 2005, a series of assaults would shatter that sense of security forever. The crimes were horrendous: break-ins, stalking, and sexual assaults. The assailant was meticulous and left little evidence. There were even accounts of how he would forcefully compel his victims to take thorough baths while he cleaned up the scene of the crime, making it hard for the police to pinpoint any suspects. The only description that they had was that he was tall, he spoke in whispers, and he seemed familiar. Little did they know that their tormentor was wearing a uniform and carrying a badge all along. One fateful night, the incessant barking of his would-be new victim's dog alerted her to danger. Due to a previous sense of being stalked weeks earlier, she wasted no time and promptly dialed the police.
What's your address, man?
Without delay, an additional officer responded and discovered Jeff Pedo lurking outside the woman's residence.
Why would you be in between two houses? Because I couldn't keep going straight. There's a drainage thing that goes down the lake. I couldn't keep walking. So I walked up, the dog started barking, well, hell. So I walked up between the houses and go to the road. All right. He comes around, I thought maybe it was the homeowner. I was like, I don't want to startle, He startled me, so I turned to walk back down. He said, stop, please. I was like, oh, let's go. I turned around and walked back.
Jeff, why do you know, as being a police officer, that kind of thing is not something we want? We don't. As police officers, we don't walk around at 12:30 at night in the morning, walking in between the houses.
From the get-go, Pedo is hostile. With a brazen demeanor, the perpetrator in question confronts the authorities, demanding immediate clarification on whether he is being placed under arrest. His affiliation with the police force grants him a comprehensive understanding of the regulations and protocols, which he cunningly attempts to exploit to his advantage within the given circumstances. Here, the investigator and his colleague begin to read him the Miranda rights and tell him that while he's not under arrest, he isn't free to go.
I have to read you your rights first. I'm not under arrest. At this point, you're not free to go. At this point, you're under arrest. I'm not free to go. I'm under arrest. Well, we're in a custodial situation. That's why I'm going to read you your rights. You have the right to remain silent. You say that you don't think it's true for the law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer and have one present with you about your question. If you can afford to hire a lawyer, you will represent you for one question of the relation. You can decide any time to exercise these rights. Knowledge for us and make mistakes. Do you understand what those rights are? Yes, of course I do. Have those rights in mind you wish to speak with. About what? Okay.
As the interrogation progresses, body language experts point out that Pedo refuses to look at the detective. This is a blatant sign that he's lying. Pedo keeps up this aggressive and evasive front for the entirety of the interrogation. He keeps asserting that he wasn't lurking at the residence of the woman who called in the police and that the complainant and Officer David Zimmer, a protege of Pedo's, are on the same page. Their stories match each other. They claim a man was seen around the to-be victim's house, looking into the windows. When approached by Officer Zimmer, the perpetrator begins to walk away. To this, Officer Zim yells, "Stop, police!" and draws his gun. This is when Pedo freezes and approaches the officer on call. The fact that Pedo, a sergeant, was caught roaming around a residential area at 12:30 a.m. and was the only one found at the residence of the petrified woman is not a good look. According to the interrogator, this left a deep impact on Officer Zimmer.
I walked between the houses. I was by the lake. I couldn't keep going, so I walked up between the houses. That's it. I mean, that is it. That's it.
You were confronted by Officer Ziegler. Yes.
Yes, he was there. I was walking up.
Okay. Let's just go with this in chronological order. First of all, is there any reason that you can tell me why David Ziegler would lie about this situation? Because I'll tell you what, he's freaked out too. Because you're one of his mentors. Well, I mean, he couldn't even hardly talk. He was so upset by the situation. He talked about how you were, one of his mentors. You were his FTO training sergeant. And I mean, he looked up to you.
All right, I understand that. All right.
Pelo's dismissive attitude towards the damage he has caused to someone who placed their trust in him aligns with the self-centered nature of his actions. By disregarding the harm he has inflicted, he demonstrates a lack of empathy.
Yes, I'm not going to apologize for being angry. I've been accused of doing something I had nothing to do with.
He fails to recognize the profound impact his behavior has had on a citizen who relied on him. This callous disregard for the consequences of his actions further underscores the selfish and inconsiderate nature of his past deeds. Pelo maintains that he was in the area looking for a property for his feeble mother-in-law. He heard a dog bark and decided to take the route from in between the woman's and her neighbor's home.
I'm interested in buying my mother-in-law a house. There's nothing really. She's poor. She's on fixed income.
Throughout the interrogation, we see Pelo getting upset at the detective assigned to this case.
I don't know what else you're trying to allege here. I don't want to jump to some kind of conclusion. Right? All this isn't about because I walked up from that lake up between those two houses.
Absolutely.
The profound extent of Pelo's anger in response to the situation serves as a prominent red flag demanding attention and scrutiny. His professional role as a police officer should have endowed him with a heightened awareness and understanding of potentially suspicious activities.
You know right from wrong. And
I understand.
I think you did wrong last night, and you think you did wrong last night. And I don't know why you did wrong.
Because I didn't do anything wrong. Walking up from that lake towards the road is the right thing to do at that point. I mean, I can't go no further. Okay, so I walked up there. I mean, if it wasn't for that thing, I'd have just walked around the lake and went right back to where my truck was at. I mean, that is all. I'm not, I'm not minimizing anything.
You are.
No, I'm not minimizing anything.
Pelo, more than most people, should have recognized the inherent alarm raised by someone lurking in close proximity to residences during the late hours of the night.
If you get a call of someone walking in between two houses at 12:30 in the morning,
I don't know what call brought in. Yes, of course.
I mean, the person who called this in has every right in the world to do this.
Dave said last night somebody knocked on somebody's door. I didn't knock on anybody's door. I didn't knock on anybody's door.
The detective continues to go back and forth with Pelo on what he knows. He tries pointing out to his colleague that the fact that he was there in the middle of the night when the woman made a frantic call describing the potential intruder is too big of a coincidence.
See, you know all the things we say. You've been sitting in this chair before. All I'm saying is that what you need to do is think about just exactly what you're saying. Before you jump back with a conclusion, Jeff, you need to think about what you're saying. You need to think about what the scenario was right now.
Despite Pelo's unwavering insistence that the woman in question did not catch sight of him, doubts begin to arise regarding the veracity of his claims. Notably, he argues that the only instance he traversed the area between the houses was when the officer observed him. However, this assertion appears dubious, as it is highly probable that he was, in fact, engaged in multiple rounds and circuits within that vicinity. Compounding the suspicion surrounding Pelo's actions, it becomes apparent that Officer Zemer had already thoroughly surveyed the entire area.
Zemer had already been throughout the whole area. You were the only person there. It was 12:30 in the morning. It was 12:30 in the morning.
The only time I walked up between the houses, like those two houses, was when Zemer came in.
This detail is crucial, as it underscores the thoroughness of the investigation and raises concerns about Pedo's potential involvement or knowledge of events that had transpired prior to his encounter with the officer. Together, these details paint a perplexing picture, casting doubt on Pedo's credibility and highlighting the need for a more comprehensive inquiry into his activities.
I've seen this lady. Okay, like I said, let me give you a different scenario. I've seen this lady. She's extremely bad. I haven't seen her. I have no idea who she is. As you're walking through the two houses, do you see anybody in the window?
I'm not looking at the windows. I didn't see anything.
I'm not saying you're looking at the windows. At this point, I'm not saying you're looking at the windows.
I wasn't even walking next. The house I was walking next to didn't even have windows on that side.
Jeff, okay, I know. Remember, I know the answers to my question.
I understand.
All right. How far apart are these houses?
I didn't measure them. I don't know. They're not very far. Your standard house, they're closer than your standard house. Yes, unless you go to the old side of town where they're really close to each other. The house I was walking next to didn't even have windows on that side of the house.
The interrogation footage unfolds like a game of cat and mouse.
I don't know nothing about the lady.
What I'm telling you, she was scared to death. She was an absolute basket case.
It wasn't for me.
What? Yes, you were in between the houses. You were in between the houses. What if this would have happened?
I walked up between the houses and Zemer was there. That's the one time I went between the houses.
What if this would have happened? Would you be a little bit concerned? Nothing to her?
But I don't understand what you're saying. The only time I walked between those two houses was when I was walking from the lake and up.
But that's where you and
that's when I met Zemer.
that's where you and Officer Zemer are different in what you said.
But whenever the lady was scared of it, wasn't me.
It was you.
How could it be me? The only time I was between the houses when I walked up and Zemer was there, she'd already called.
Jeff.
Pedo outrightly denies the detective's every move to try and make him see how strange this sequence of events is. Pedo's persistent repetition of his narrative not only fails to enhance his credibility, but rather diminishes it, specifically the way he smacks his legs and flails about like a child throwing a tantrum.
Yeah, you know it's not good.
That's it.
It's not good.
That's it.
Because the scenario doesn't fit. You know the scenario doesn't fit. It doesn't make sense to anyone.
All right.
It doesn't make sense. Right? If I'm going to look at a lake access, I'm not going to do it at 12:30.
All right. Poor choice of times, but that's why I did it. All right. I just walked down there. All right.
What are you, 17 years?
Yeah.
17 years of being a police officer.
I understand.
And you don't think that is a severe error in judgment?
These erratic and immature behaviors detract from his perceived professionalism and undermine his attempts to be taken seriously.
In between two houses at 12:30 in the morning,
All I was doing was walking from the lake to the road. All right. You're implying that I'm doing something mysterious between these houses, and all I'm doing is walking from the lake up to the road. That's it.
That's exactly what I'm implying, Jeff.
That's it. That's all I'm
Because
doing.
Officer Zemer, who can agree to, says has no reason to lie about this, says that you were up against the house, and he had to call for you 3 different times.
No, you didn't call 3 different times.
And then you turned around and walked the other way.
In essence, the pattern of repetition coupled with his uncontrolled physical reactions serves as compelling evidence that Pedo's account should be approached with caution.
I didn't do anything to anyone. I did not. I don't.
You have to understand.
I understand.
Now, this is a bad situation. A very bad situation.
The detective proceeds to ask for more details on why Pedo decided to move away from Zimmer initially. If Pedo thought it was the homeowner, why didn't he approach him instead of walking away? Pedo finds himself unable to provide a reasonable explanation for his attempt to evade when confronted with this inquiry.
I wasn't doing anything wrong. I had nothing to hide. If I'd have realized it was a police officer, anyone, Zimmer, anybody, I'd have just kept on walking when he broke stride. I thought it was someone that lived there. I was like, oops. I mean, the dog was barking.
You thought it was someone who lived there, so you were going to try to get away from the person who was living there?
Well,
Right. However, but for a young female, having someone looking in her windows or trying her doors is...
but I didn't do anything like that.
At the critical moment when the detective highlights the flaws and inconsistencies in his statement, Pedo's demeanor shifts from composed to agitated. Frustrated by the weaknesses exposed in his narrative, he resorts to blustering, relying on empty and boastful speech in an attempt to deflect attention from the vulnerabilities in his account.
And I keep on going back to this because I have to go back to this because you know what it's like to be sitting in this chair.
I understand.
Okay?
All right. And I know there are times that people are literally telling you the truth. And a good interview will figure that out. All right. I don't know. I'm telling you the truth. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong.
Instead of calmly addressing the concerns raised by the detective, he becomes defensive and resorts to bluster, a tactic often employed when one lacks substantive evidence or a coherent argument.
And why does she have any reason to call down here and say, hey, this is what's happening in my house? Not once, but twice. And also calls her brother.
Right, again, I don't know who was messing with the lady. It was not me. All right. Obviously, if somebody's messing with her in whatever fashion it was, I don't know. Of course she should call.
Okay, but we've already established there was nobody else there.
However, through diligent police work and the courage of the survivors, a pattern began to emerge, linking the attacks to the same perpetrator. Detectives eventually identified Pedo as a suspect, and during the investigation, they discovered incriminating evidence, such as DNA samples and personal items connecting him to the crimes.
You were standing up against the wall like this.
That did not occur.
And an officer
That did not
confronted
occur.
you twice.
That did not occur.
And then you turning
No.
and walking away
Did I
with your
turn?
hands right here, and he says, stop. Show me your hands. And he has, and I mean, you've been in the ERU.
I understand.
You've been in, you're a weapons guy. You're former military.
I understand.
And you're telling me you didn't know somebody had a gun pointed at you?
In October 2006, Jeff Pedo stood trial for his heinous actions. The prosecution presented a compelling case, detailing the horrific experiences of the victims and presenting the physical evidence that directly linked Pedo to the assaults.
I have a police officer. I have a victim. I have you mentally in the area. I mean, it's not looking good for Jeff Pedo.
The trial shed light on the dark reality that even those entrusted with protecting the community can become perpetrators of heinous crimes. Pedo was found guilty of multiple counts of sexual assault, home invasion, and kidnapping. In January 2007, he was sentenced to 440 years in prison, effectively ensuring he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. His conviction brought a sense of relief and closure to the victims, their families, and the community, but the scars left by his actions will endure for a long time.
I didn't even feel comfortable going outside by myself. That's how much my life changed.